So the lock miter bit has a pretty well-deserved reputation for being dreadful to set up, and a lot of people avoid it because of that. And we know that, so we've created a lock miter bit that makes it much easier to set up. We take all the guesswork out of it. So here's why it's so difficult to set up. There's a couple of criteria here. Your bit needs to be set to the center line of your stock, regardless of what the stock thickness is. So the first thing we need to do is figure out the thickness of this stock. Now, I don't know what it is, but I've got my fit finder here. The fit finder is one of our tools. You loosen up the knobs on the back. As P2 moves up and down, you'll see P3 over here is moving half that dimension. It's always going to indicate half. So I put my part on the table. I drop my P2 on top of it. So this is now half of that stock. We're there. But the profile of this router bit, the center point of this profile is halfway along the slope here between the tongue and the groove. So right about there. How do you locate that on this bit? That's where the problem comes in with the lock miter bit. Well, when we had this milled, when they shaped this router bit, we had them mill the step into the side of the body that is exactly that half point. You can't do it in the carbide because then you'll change the cut, but we did it in the body. So now I'm going to make sure that this is not set to this piece that I just measured, right? Okay, so we can see it's not set up right. So now this is set to half of my stock. So now I'm just going to lower my bit until that is just barely touching that face. This bit is now correctly set to cut a lock miter in that piece of stock.
Because this is the center of
that
thickness.
Yes. Okay. So, as we go forward, any adjustments we need to make to the fit of our lock miter bit, we are not going to move the bit height. We're only going to adjust the fence. Normally, when you move the fence, you have to move the bit. When you move the bit, you have to move the fence. They have to move proportionally to maintain the diagonal of the angle cut. We've eliminated all that. So how do you set the fence? Well, if this is our fence, and this is my stock, I want to find a point where the top face of my stock and the front face of my fence meet this angle, the top angle above the tongue and groove on this carbide router bit. I can't get the fence in that close, and I can't get my stock in that close, so I'm going to lay a straight edge down, and I'm just going to bring it over, and now I'm going to move my fence until that straight edge is right aligned where I want it. Then I'm going to lock it down. Okay? That's how you set the fence.
And where do you want it?
I want the ruler is sitting on top of this,
yes,
and it's butted up against the fence. So that corner of the ruler wants to just touch the carbide wherever it does. Remember, the height's already set. But to set the fence here, we're going to come in until it just touches that carbide at the apex of the swing. Now, with my fence locked, I can start making my first cut. And I'll know immediately what adjustments I need to make. If I cut this, and then I look at this edge should be razor sharp right here, okay? It should come to a sharp point. If it's got a flat on it, the fence is too far forward, I'm not cutting deep enough, I gotta move the fence back. If when I start cutting, I notice the snipe here where it starts to cut away at that edge and lose some of this dimension here, I'm too deep and I need to back off. And that's it. So basically, I can usually get a perfectly good fit the first time out with this setup process. But if I don't, all I have to do is make a minor adjustment to the fence position, and I can almost always get it with one test cut setup and try out. Now, the other thing you'll notice, at the bottom of both of these tongues, there's a little bit of a gap there, right there. That's a glue well. That's not a flaw. So the reason being that when you're gluing up a 4-foot long post, any glue that gets down inside those grooves has no place to go. It can't squeeze out to the ends, and it's not going to squeeze out past all of these angles. So if you don't have enough, if you put too much glue in on any lock miter, you have trouble closing the joint because the glue is holding it open. You still want to be careful about not applying too much glue, but in this case, you've got at least a little bit of room to absorb some of the excess if you have it. So this helps you get a much cleaner joint as you go forward. And
So I have a question.
go ahead.
So when you're running these, once you have that set up,
Right.
you're going to run laying down
Yes.
and one
Sorry.
vertical.
So yes, one runs like this, flat on the table. The other one runs vertically. That is the same piece. Runs vertically, standing against the fence.
And this is designed for, can you do 1/2 inch, 5/8, 3/4, or just 3/4?
Yes, this will take 1/2 inch through 3/4 inch stock.
Okay.
And we actually made the bit just a little bit higher than 3/4, because when you go to do that touch off the top of the carbide, if 3/4 is the top of your carbide, then you got nothing to touch on because this is going to be above that.
Right.
So we gave it an extra millimeter up above so that you'll be able to do that touch off right up to a full 3/4 of an inch.
What's standard hardwood thickness? It's a little
Less
over
than
3/4.
A little less.
Hardwood?
Yeah.
Usually,
Usually you buy 1 inch lumber and it comes in 3/4.
this thing's just a hair off. Okay.
It depends on the hardwood. It depends.
Yeah.
But remember, one of the things that you need in order to get good results with any lock miter bit, all the stock has to be exactly the same thickness. You've got to joint it, face joint it, and plane it all before you start making your cuts, or you're just not going to get good results. You're not going to get clean joints. So even if you start with nominally 3/4 or maybe a little bit over, you're going to end up at 3/4.
Okay.
Now, the other thing you can do, and I show in the instructional video, this with a 3/4 inch piece, you're removing a lot of material here. It's not a bad idea if you can do it to take a bevel cut on the corner, the lower corner, and get rid of some of that excess that you don't need. I would take a setup block like this and just verify that you're not cutting away part of the tongue here. But you can cut, if you look at it, I could cut away, bevel out some of that. Whatever you don't see there, I can bevel out, not interfere with my cut, and it's that much less material I got to remove here.
Okay.
The other thing you can do is once you get your setup done, if you want to make 2 passes, don't try to reset your bit. You can literally grab a piece of 1/4 inch material, clamp it to the fence of your router table with a little cutout, run the piece, take this out, run the piece again. And that's
For 0 flares.
well, yeah, but this gives you a spacer, and then when you remove the spacer, but
Okay.
it has to be going. You can't raise the bit to make 2 cuts. You've got to come in because of the tongue and groove.
No, we've done that with the release panels where we'll put 2 or 3 faces.
Yep.
So we can't hog it all out of one pass
Right.
on the router table, where you maybe with the shape of it.
Oh, and this is another thing while we're looking at this. For some reason, a lot of the instructions on lock miter bits, they tell you, mill one edge of the stock horizontal and one edge of the stock vertical. Why? If you do that, then you have to have clamps coming from both directions. Here, I did the poplar is done on the table horizontally. The walnut is done standing vertically. So all I have to do is put these 2 into that, and then put the cap on it, clamp it from one direction only. I only need 1 set of clamps instead of 2, because putting a clamp here does you no good. The tongues are in the way.
Right.
The only clamp you need is here if you do it this way. If you do it the way a lot of them tell you, with 1 on each end, then you need a pair of clamps in both directions.
It's running the one that was done vertical.
Yeah. The vertical one actually becomes the base.
And the other trick to that is that you have to use their new ratchet clamp, and it works better.
That's right. We do have the ratchet clamp, which we can show.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.